Well, okay, I just want to say welcome to everybody tonight, all 17 people that are in the room. Um, Tonight we had to do a quick pivot because got to live in the moment here on TikTok, and our speaker called into work, so valid reason. And so we're going to pivot, and we're going to stay with the BC election theme, and we're going to focus on the debate conversation because pretty much all topics were generally covered. And then some real shenanigans happened at that debate that I feel is worthy having a deep dive in. So before we get started on all that conversation, me and Mrs. Radical and our partner Nerdy, who is our tech guy here on Beaver Politics, we want to just I lost my train of thought here. We just want to remind everybody that when you come up into the box, that we still would like it if you could like and share and keep the our live getting promoted. Keep that like button especially. And we're going to try to stay on Canadian politics as much as possible on the social justice issues that revolve around them. But we don't have a particular one speaker, so we're just going to revolve through people who want to come up into the box and share your thoughts. So do I have any takers for first one up and at her in the box here?
Can I just do a quick couple of like mod things?
Please do mod.
So you already said tapping is clapping, sharing is caring. So if we share, we care. And just to remind everybody that we do have subscriptions now. Unfortunately, we're not able to participate in the sub fiesta, so we don't have the 30% off like it's advertising on the thing because we have a glitch going on with our account. So if you want to subscribe to us, you get access to emotes that we have in the disc or in the chat. And we also have a Discord all set up and everything. And then also we do have a YouTube channel now as well. So I posted 2 weeks ago when we were talking with MS Lotus. I have that one posted already, and tomorrow I'll be posting the one from last week with Zojin. And then I will post the one from tonight in a couple more days. And every week it'll get posted up there. So if you missed it, you can watch them on there. And yeah, that was it. Just my 4 things. So tapping is clapping, sharing is caring.
Yeah. Those 4 things, man, I'll tell you what we've been able to do with 2 weeks with Nerdy being involved with Beaver Politics. We haven't been able to do it 6-8 months. So this is fabulous. YouTube, we have a YouTube channel. And we're very excited to share all about that. So, Mrs. Radical, do you have anything you'd like to say before?
Well, I'd like to pop in. I think we should talk about the leaders and what each one brought to the table. When I watched it, excuse me, the clear winner to me was the leader of the Green Party. Really, when I watched it its entirety, I know, unfortunately, she's not going to probably walk away with it, but I hope that she grows that party a little bit more. She was confident. She was strong. She clapped back at both of them. I hope to see more coming from her.
I agree. I agree with your thoughts there. Does any of our guests, Progressive Moose, or are you following the BC election, Progressive Moose?
I did get a chance this morning. I was late watching the debate on it, but I absolutely agree with Miss Radical on. I believe the Green Party was the clear winner on that one. And I'll just add that I think she was more strategic when she did actually get involved and spoke up. She took her opportunity where the other two were just kind of, for lack of better terms, slapping each other back and forth to see if something would stick, right? So she was the most clear-headed, in my opinion. Seemed like she had the most kind of policy on paper, so to speak, and had receipts to back up what she had to say. So kudos to the Green Party there.
I felt like John Rustad was like making it up as he went along. Like he was listening to David Eby and he was almost ready to backtrack any second and change something. You know what I mean? Just to pander.
Oh yeah, they were both ready. They were both ready to be at each other's throats again, for lack of better words. because even while one was speaking, the other was already making snide comments, or you could hear them making some sort of remark. So that was essentially, I think, what they were aiming for was just kind of a slap fest back and forth, and hope something stuck. And it looked bad on both of them, absolutely.
Oh, Polly Chick is in the box. I hope she wants to pop up for a minute because she did the debate, Maple Mines, right? We all work together on TikTok here, and Christy and Polly Chick and MS Lotus do Maple Mines. So they invited me to sit with them and watch the debate, and it was fabulous. I think we were talking about we should do a drinking game every time John, he's got that scary and the horrible NDP, and look what they brought to the table. 9 years. And
First of all, in Progressive Moose, the Green Party only has 2 seats here in British Columbia. Only 2 seats. But they have been able to be, like the NDP at the federal level, take their little bitty seats and make it very much that you are about like a vital part of the government, right? Like,
Absolutely. I definitely feel that the way she partook and does things, and I have followed a bit of BC politics before the debate as well. Definitely not well versed, but it definitely seems that the Green Party has a voice and they use it as loud as they can. And you're right, it's the same as the NDP on the federal level, where yeah, they might have a lower amount of seats, but they definitely, in terms of their message, they are the loudest. And most left leaning, of course. So those two things combined, it seems like the Green Party. I really like, they don't have much, but I really hope, like we saw with the NDP and Jack Layton, where yeah, okay, he didn't get a win on it, but it was a landslide victory in terms of what they had seen for numbers for years before that, right? So I hope we can see that with the Green Party in BC. Even if they don't get the win, we can see more seats get given to them or get voted into them, and actually start to see more of a swing their way, and hopefully that'll sway legislation or policy in the future.
yeah. And when we had a minority government, they partnered with the Green Party, and the Green Party and the NDP had a confidence motion, a non-confidence motion agreement as well. And that lasted for quite a while. And I think you're absolutely right. Her performance at the debate will result in extra Green seats being elected in this cycle. I believe that.
I really liked how David Eby, and I guess I'm asking a question as I make a point of view. I want to know what everyone thinks here, but I really liked what David Eby, how he said he didn't just talk about policy. Okay, he talked about history. And he talked about John Rushdad's history, and that needed to be pounded out a little bit. And Mr. Eby took those opportunities. Anyone?
I actually haven't been following the BC politics a whole lot. I've heard the name had talked around like in circles and stuff like that. So I'm just kind of listening to catch up on some of this. Which party does he represent again?
Pardon me?
Which party does he represent again?
Mr. Rushdad, it would be conservative.
Okay.
And we don't in BC have a real true liberal party. So this is really just a 2-horse race.
So is Rustad like following the typical federal conservative, agenda, like even with Daniel Smith in Alberta here?
Anybody else want to take this?
I don't
with the chemtrails, and I'll leave it at that with Daniel Smith, and enough said.
Yeah.
So you understand then Take Back Alberta. You will know that group?
I've heard of it.
Okay, so we have one like that in British Columbia called BC Rising. which is
Okay.
full of all the the anti-vax conservatives, conspiracy
Oh, okay, yeah.
evangelicals, and they are the ones who have put a lot of money into the rise of the BC Conservative Party, which happened over a 6-month period. And then we had who I refer to as Tiny Trump. We had him here many, many times, and he was working. But the reason he was here is really to confuse people about. We don't have the federal carbon tax in British Columbia, but he had axe the tax rallies, and he got people confused about that. And I think, although we don't have evidence, but I really think the reason he was out here doing all the things he was doing was to lend the support to the rise of the BC Conservative Party, because all of the BC Conservative Party slogans are the common sense slogans. British Columbia is broken.
Didn't he bring Ron DeSantis and the dude from Fox News over there?
100%. And you know something? It's a playbook, right? And one thing I noticed the other day, and I'm going to harp on this every election forward, as long as they're in and playing this broken Trump playbook, because they've all been fired.
Yeah.
They've all been fired. We made our decision a long time ago about them, and they're pushing back on this revisionist history. They set the table to work against Canadians to see a win for themselves over time, right? And they saw the win in raising our food prices, raising our housing prices, making it really, really hard for Canadians, for people with disabilities. They took away our federal housing, and they did it province to province. And he is on that train.
And then the conservatives are the ones that are saying, do something about housing. But it's the conservatives province to province that took away that federal funding. And now they're the ones that are trying to blame, the feds for not having any funding for housing. It's just like they're trying to privatize the healthcare system in Alberta. They're following Trump's game plan down in the States. What they're doing.
Can I jump in, Mrs. Radical?
Yes, you.
Yeah. Hi. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm just back from holidays, so I didn't see the leadership debate because I was at my local all candidates meeting, but I've seen some of the highlights and just a couple of comments. Just in response.
Just a comment. That's an amazing reason not to see it.
Yeah.
Sorry. Everybody give us kudos for that.
Yeah, so I just, for Mr. Real Native, you asked a question about whether the conservatives here in BC are the same as Poilievre's, and they're basically exactly the same. They're funded by them, I think. Their communications are exactly the same as what Poilievre puts out. There's this massive run on negativity, insults, lies, constant lying, even, the awful, disgusting lie that Rustad said during the leadership debate about seeing somebody die of an overdose on his way to the debate, which was debunked immediately afterwards. He's a liar on every single level. We now have the incredible racism in BC against Native Indigenous peoples and against Muslim people that came out today from a post from one of the Conservative candidates. So they're taking I'm going on and on here, sorry, but in answer to your question, the Conservatives here are exactly like the federal Conservatives. They're as ugly, as incompetent, as disgusting, as Trumpy as Mr. Poilievre. So we don't want them. Well, I don't want them, and obviously that's why we're here. But it's been an amazing rise in a very short period of time for a party that's been nothing in this province. They have no competence to lead. They have no experience. It's kind of a despicable, sad state of affairs. So,
Julia, may I ask you a question?
Yes.
What did you think of the polling with Ipsos Reid and like all of that stuff that was Ipsos Reid? Maybe I'm saying the wrong polling, but the group that started putting out misinformation and stuff like that the day before the debate.
Well, exactly. That's what they do. And so it completely destroys their credibility. All of these agencies, organizations are in pivoting to this right-wing support, this right-wing messaging, this right-wing propaganda. It's well worth looking at Nitty's recent video on her being approached to be a right-wing
Yes.
influencer, and it's really scary on some level that this is happening, but it is happening. It's the reality, and we need to deal with that, which is we need to get out and vote against these people because we still have that right. One of the things I just wanted to add, if I can talk a little bit more and then I'll stop, is when I was at my all candidates meeting, I live in North Vancouver. And so I went to the all candidates meeting. It was all people like me with gray hair, except for one 35-year-old guy, which was, not a good showing for young people. Anyhow, we have an NDP incumbent who, of course, I'm supportive of. We have an independent who is quite sincere. We have a conservative who I believe is sincere and just wants to get into politics. What didn't come up there at all were questions around the conspiracy theories of Restad, around his lying, his economic incompetence. It just didn't really come up, except for one guy who asked about Nuremberg 2, and then the moderator became hysterical and said, don't answer the question, because she didn't want to go there. And luckily people in the audience were like, no, answer the question. So all of this stuff that we're seeing online and that we're very attuned to, I didn't get the sense, at least in the meeting I went to, that most people know much about. So.
Okay, so I'm just going to ask for a mod break. If you look over to our dear friend Nerdy, she's sending us a message. And that is, Nerdy, want to tell us?
Tapping is clapping, sharing is caring. Let's tap the screen. I want to see us get to 20K likes, please, in the next little bit. I want to see us get to 50K by the end of the live total. So yeah, the more we tap, awesome, the better it is to get us out onto the FYP. Same with sharing. If you want to share to multiple people, the best way to do that is hold your finger down on the Beaver Politics picture there, and then it'll pop up a screen, and you can go send, and each one of those counts as a share instead of sharing it to 15 people at once.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, tapping is clapping, sharing is caring. Make sure you join the little team up top, the little heart up at the very top there. It's $1 to do that. And if you're liking what you're seeing, give us a subscribe to us. It's $5.49 a month for subscriptions. You get access to the Discord, and you also get access to the really cool emotes that we have in the bottom in our little chat.
I wanted to say, like, the Conservatives have such a following, unfortunately. We had an incident near my reserve in the town of Lacabish where I don't know if you guys have seen it circulating around TikTok, but it was an incident where a native man was being arrested by the RCMP, and he was hands on the car, he was surrendering, he's facing the vehicle, and the cop comes up behind him and just forks on him, and he smashes his face into the pavement. And the comments were, oh, now they're going to ask us for money, us taxpayers for money for that. He said, and he put the word deal in brackets. And the racism that they are promoting, the Conservatives, but then they'll throw their hands up and say, oh, no, we're not racist. We're not promoting any racism. No, but yet all of their, I won't say all of their followers. I will say some of the will make racist.
I think you're covering up your mic because you're getting really muffled. Yeah. So if your hand's on the top or the bottom of your phone, it's covering up your mic.
Yeah. I have a bad habit of pushing my phone away from my face too as I talk.
Okay.
Yeah, but they have a tendency to make comments like that, but then they'll throw their hands up and say, oh, no, we're not racist. But at the same time, the whole party is, and I'm sure it's going to be in BC if they get in, it's going to go against the Indigenous population there too. So yeah, like it's just I can't believe some of the conspiracy theories they come up with. It's just, it makes me laugh,
In BC, they're talking about taking Indigenous tree money and water money. And And if anybody else is a little bit more schooled in that particular department, feel free to chime in, the missus or anyone else.
Yeah, so what they're doing here with the Conservative Party. So let's talk about some of the debate pieces where David Eden was talking about the NDP's plan to honor our Supreme Court. What a bizarre fucking thing to do, eh? He's going to honor the Supreme Court. He says we can't spend any more money fighting this issue. It has been established in Canada that there's land rights here. So they've come up with, they're calling it land management. And they, on their, let's just say if you were to do a flow chart of the provincial government, Indigenous land management is right up alongside the premier, right? Right up alongside the province. So they're not, and in this land management agreement, which has been worked on for years, get this is a little sweet gem piece of information, folks. The man running against John Rustad here in British Columbia is Murphy Abraham. Now, he's an Indigenous man from the Nechako Lakes area, but he was chief of Lake Babine Nation. He worked on the foundational document that created this land management approach. And in that original agreement, which is a signed legal contracted agreement, what he did was he had to go to all of the Indigenous communities as well as all of the the municipalities like Houston and Fort St. James and Vanderhoof and all these little small communities in the Nechako Lakes area. And he had to form relationships with the town councilors, with the mayors. He had to form relationships with all of the governing agencies or the governing governments of the Indigenous communities. And he has that relationship with them, and he is running against John Rustad. And there's a very good chance that John Rustad will not even win his own seat. And he has, because the person running against him, if Indigenous people use their opportunity to express their voice through their vote, he would lose. He's
Good.
gonna lose, and that's a real threat.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Did I say something?
No, I think Indigenous Pride had a question. I also have somebody waiting in the queue if somebody wants, if somebody's okay with me cycling through them, so I can bring somebody else up. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hey guys, I'm gonna step away from my mic for a bit.
All right. Thank you. Sure appreciated everything you've had to say.
My take on John Rustad in the debate was all I heard was deflect, 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 say fancy words, put them together, make a word salad, deflect, 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 say another fancy word, not understanding the fancy word, not understanding what he's talking about, and just deflect, deflect, deflect. And that's all I heard from this guy. And I can tell you honestly right now, I have no vote of confidence in the UCP whatsoever. I think they are the poison in this country that needs to be taken down. That's what I believe. But that's just me. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, I can't disagree with that. One thing that annoys me about John, and I call him Rustad, is that he needs a notebook all the time. Why can't he speak from his heart? And how come he doesn't know the issues off the top of his head like he should if he's going to be a premier, right? So that's a little thing, but sometimes little things matter, right? But he's always
To speak from a heart, you actually have to have a heart.
Yeah, I suppose. Welcome, Paul.
May I say something?
Absolutely, Grandma. If you don't mind us saying just Grandma.
My impression over the past month or so has been that John is out for his own purposes. I'm sorry to say that. The Green Party, I'm sympathetic to. And I wish they had more people or power or whatever. But the NDP, I don't see that as any other choice. And if you want to prove me wrong, prove me wrong. But maybe I'm selfish. I don't want any more conservative premiers in Canada. It's taking over. It's ruining everything. Ontario has, well, we're going to have the next huge problem. So, plus, I like what Green Party says about Indigenous. I like what NDP says about Indigenous. But not John, I'm sorry. So go ahead, rip me apart.
I don't think you're going to get ripped too hard on this panel. we're all sharing the same kind of thoughts up here. I don't know if anybody in the audience is pro-conservative, or even if you're not pro-conservative, can you think of something in the debate that John Rustad said that would be attractive to you, that as a voter, what he said is, the fact that he didn't come with a costed platform. Like David Eby's comment about why are we even having a debate? How can we debate your idea, your thought, when you haven't costed it out? I can come up with an idea that sounds really good, but I have no idea what the numbers are. And yet you can move forward with your ideas and you don't even know your own numbers. So how can you build confidence? Go ahead, Mrs. Radical.
Pick me. I know the answer to this. This started the day that Stephen Harper crawled into the Trump White House. And on that day, he did not take the front door. He crawled past the media and he strategically went through the back door. And then 2 weeks later within Canada, he did a speech and he said he was alone responsible for bringing the Trump playbook to Canada. And all of these leaders, when they're debating and when they're speaking, they are following a script.
Yes.
They are not following a platform. They are not following a plan. They haven't made anything. It's not interesting. It's new. It's a frickin' script of 2025 Heritage Project 2025, period.
That's exactly right, Mrs. Radical. That's exactly what they're doing. They don't deviate from it. They repeat this nonsense. People feed into it. I think a lot of people don't want to believe how dangerous it is, or they don't understand it. They believe the right-wing propaganda about Eby, about Trudeau, that they're dangerous for us or dangerous for our economy. I would also suggest, and then I will step back here because I can talk about this forever, that people read the Tyee article that came out today about how advantageous BC's economy is. BC has a good economy. We're doing really well in Canada. And what I heard at my all candidates meeting was a lot of concern from the audience about how bad the debt is without any of that other context. And unfortunately, the NDP candidate that I am happily voting for wasn't able to explain it properly either. So take a look at that article, but they just repeat. And if you look at the psychology of it, it works. So we need to vote. And I'll step back and thank you for doing this. Thank you.
And on that note, we go to Nerdy.
Nerdy's time again.
All right. Yay, we're at 21K likes. Thank you. Let's continue tapping. Tapping is clapping. Keep on tapping. And let's get the shares up. And also, the other thing I wanted to say too, we also do have a gift goal up at the top. So if you do want to help support the channel, gifting is a good way to do that. We've got some 1 coin gifts, 5 coin gifts, and 10 coin gifts on there. So, and I went with kind of the Halloween-y ones that they have out now because they're cool.
Another thing I noticed from the conservative part is, they can't see past the hatred that they've been fed. They believe all the things about minority groups, whether it be the rainbow community, because I can't say the full letters, I mix it up. So the rainbow community, the disabled community, the Indigenous, the BIPOC community in our country, they can't see past all the stuff they've been fed. They've been drinking the Kool-Aid. I've been watching American politics. I've been on American politics live, Canadian politics lives, and everything I see from the conservative is just hateful and misinformation and rhetoric. And this is what's dangerous to Canadians around the country. We are losing people left, right, and frickin' center because of the hate and comments and the things that happen to our Indigenous community. Tonight I got called a boozer because I said white people can't. And I was explaining something, and I said, this is not where you need to be. I'm worried about this person's mental health. I get told I'm a boozer. I get told this. I get told to go back to my country. Everything. And these are conservative people.
Yeah.
I've grown up with these people. They're telling me all this shit. They're like, oh, blah, blah, blah. I could go on for days about the sickening things I've seen in this country. But if conservatives get in, we're in real freaking trouble. This country is going to go down faster than we can say Bob's our uncle. And that's not fair to anybody in this country. We need more unity than division.
We need unity, and we need to, I think we're going to find that unity anyways on TikTok for sure, by being careful of what we see and what we react to in this community. There's a lot of, I want to say, dividers that are coming in and roadblocks that are hitting our community. And what those roadblocks are doing is stopping us from sticking together and creating that content and pushing it. And as a TikTok community, like when we see that Indigenous creator that just got attacked, right?
I seen I did.
It's disturbing. But we need to uplift him and have his back. And we can't get distracted by drama. We need to stand strong.
The attracted from drama piece is really great in terms of the rhetoric piece, but the amount of actual acted out violence that has increased towards Indigenous people, I think, is a direct result of what women against polio. I don't want to say his name. Women against Tiny Trump. That short, quick rhetoric works, but it only works in certain brains, people. We must remember that Canadians are 70% lean to the left, and there's plenty of conservatives who just sit there because they think it's fiscally responsible, and they don't buy into the other pieces, and the only thing they do is they don't mind sitting at the table with the other pieces, right? But majority of Canadians do not succumb to that short, they get bored with it, right? Our brains aren't challenged by it. We want to know the deeper story here on the left. We want to engage deeper than just that broke Canada is broken, the, axe the tax slogan level. So have some comfort in that. And then if I could take up 2 more minutes of this, I wanted to address another point that women against Tiny Trump brought up, that her, in terms of the debt in British Columbia being so big that it scares people, when in actuality our economy has jumped to #1 in Canada. #1, #2, we're right up there in terms of the macro picture for how the economy functions. This is important because when countries lend money, borrow money, countries don't die the way we do it, after 60, 70, 80 years. The country won't die. So the debt is looked at differently. And it's looked at in terms of how does your economy handle that debt? And right now, because we live in a world of credit, all debt is just numbers in a little computer screen. But the economy of British Columbia is doing so well that this happened. And Progressive Moose was talking about the lack of policy for NDP. I can tell you one piece of policy that does shine for me. It's not the complete answer, because I'm learning now nobody gets a complete answer. But I'm being distracted by a commentary. I'm just not going to look for a minute. But the bottom line is our economy is so well that when the NDP took their housing strategy to the financiers, to the banks have agreed, based on the economy, to loan 40% of a mortgage value to first-time homeowners trying to get in the market. The government's going to loan people money and guarantee that loan, and the bank is going to accept that as part of the down payment process for getting into housing. In order for banks to do that, they have to have confidence in the economy. And I think that's kind of like a great example to use to explain how the debt, being what it is, isn't the boogeyman that the conservatives are laying it out to be. Does that make sense?
It does to me.
Does? Okay.
Yeah, it does to me.
Okay. I
Yeah.
just went on a big rant. Maybe nobody's listening.
No, we're listening.
And so I see the big picture in that. Now, to me, and if he didn't go far enough, we need socialized housing and just put it out there and do it. NDP is supposed to be socially driven, and I don't see it.
The socialized housing is starting to come through. I know this just by way of working with our unhoused community. And so one of the things I'm starting to see, I started seeing this about 5 months ago within small communities and in BC. They're going through and they're buying old apartment buildings, hotels, motels. And right now, those old buildings are being renovated because they weren't in great condition, right? They're old buildings, so they're being renovated, and they should be, a lot of those buildings, at least in my area in East Putin, will be probably available by May. And those won't be shelters. These are homes for seniors, for special needs people, right? And just some people that just weren't unlucky enough to find a home.
Thanks for watching the debate with us. It was fun. You went missing though. You were like, and then we're like, oh no, she's gone. We were
My
hoping
battery
you could stay
went. I
for
was
the
having
end.
so much fun. I wasn't paying attention.
It was fun. It was. We're gonna have to have you up again. See, my brain is
Love to
frozen.
have you. I wonder. I was thinking.
Sorry, I wasn't there. I really would have liked to have been. I watched it by recording. Life was.
It would have been so fun. I could have had 10 people.
Yeah, next time, no. Then there's always the next time.
Yeah.
Notice that Women Against Tiny Trump is back in the box, and I'm hoping it's in response to what I said.
Yes, I was just going to say, sorry, I didn't think I'd come back, and I have to change my name now, Mrs., because of you're absolutely right. I just wanted my account to be very clear where I stand. But I take your point 100%. But no, I think again with the economy, again reading that for just someone like me who's not an economist, looking at the Tyee, there's a guy called David Schreck who's on Twitter who has done some really good posts on actual detailed economics in our budget that make it out not to be a disaster like the Conservatives want it to be. I think the other message too that's really important when I talk to people about this who are leaning Conservative is that every Conservative government in Canada creates more government debt because they lower taxes, they don't know how to manage money, every single one of them. So I think that's an important point, an important fact to point out as well. And the biggest thing for me, again, I keep saying is encourage people to vote. It is so important, especially young people. What I heard at our all candidates meeting from the young man who spoke was that they don't feel engaged. They feel that everything's going to shit for them because they can't afford a home, the environment, blah, 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 blah. And they can't seem to engage themselves. And part of me is like, well, that's on you then, if you can't even bother to go to a voting booth. The other part of me is like, I get where they're coming from. And how do we encourage the young people in our lives to get out there and vote? Because every vote counts, especially in this election, being as close as it is. It's really critical to vote. And maybe that's something, I don't know if you want to talk about that before, well, the election's next week. So,
early voting is today, right?
Early voting started today. Yeah.
People are out there voting. I have special needs adults that I take care of and work with. They will go with me. I call the voting stations early. I talk to them about it. They make a plan for me. So if you have special needs, if you have challenges, please know they will accommodate you.
Yes, my sister is a supervisor at one of the polling stations here on one of the First Nations lands. And she said, our territories, is that they will make every accommodation for people to vote. Whether you have a disability, whether you don't have any ID, whether you don't have, especially if you're Indigenous, you don't need ID. You don't need to have a voting card. You can have somebody vouch for you if you any of that. There is no barrier in this province to voting. for people. It is wide open. So go and exercise your right. People died for that right. Go and exercise it.
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay. Is there a chance, if by slim chance, if Rustad gets the majority votes for this election in BC, could that call for an early election in the federal government?
No.
And if so, how would that have, okay. That's all I
No.
wanted to know. Because someone was saying that there could be an early election if this goes south and goes to conservative.
I mean,
No,
it'll create
no.
a lot of problems for the federal government. There's no doubt that
Okay.
it'll create a lot more chaos before the federal election comes next year. But I don't think they can push it.
No, they
And
can't. They can't.
Yeah, I'll be comforted if the NDP are re-elected here in British Columbia. I'll be comforted if the Conservatives are elected federally, because our coastline will be protected appropriately, because our Indigenous people will be protected. I won't say appropriately, because there's way more to do, but they'll have that more so than if the Conservatives were in, as well as any other minority group, right? And if I could offer a bit of hope for, because I wish Creek Pete was here, because he's the expert on how media fucks with the statistics and what they want to cover. And they're saying it's a neck and neck race, and I don't believe it.
Well, you looked at Sherry in the 388, right? And I went to that polling after she said it, and it is not a neck and neck race. The NDP is actually polling quite well.
Yes, they've started to. Yeah.
It's who you're looking at.
Don't say that. We want people to think that they're getting ahead, so they'll go in and vote. They'll be like, oh my God, we can't have them in. We got to go out and vote.
Yes, we don't want false security here. Get out there now.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
No false security, but I do want to repeat the story about the fact Mrs. MS Lotus Lady's, she did, talk conversation on this, but because of what happened when the BC United Party folded into the Conservatives, what that left was a lot of the centrists of the BC United Party with no place to go. And they're running as independents. And that represents, out of the 96 ridings we have, 32 or 34 of them are running independents that are neck to neck with conservatives, because they are old conservatives, right? And so
they're pissed.
They're going to take the vote away from the conservatives. Mm-hmm. And I know in my riding,
good.
Surely, and another point Women Against Tiny Trump mentioned is they don't have, the candidates running don't have the experience to run a government. Now, in my riding, Shirley Bond, who's been a long-term Liberal, BC United, refused to run for John Rustad, and they're neighbors. They're neighbors, because I live in John Rustad's area. And she had to basically step aside, and she's not running for politics. And what she came to the table with, she was Minister of Finance, Minister of Education. She served as Deputy Premier. And the people with the experience in that party that will allow the government to function somewhat well if the Conservatives are elected, they don't exist. They're all running as independents. And so John Rustad is running a crew of conspiracy thinking people that want to launch their political careers based on that, not based on how actual governments function, Anyway, I'll shut up about that, but I feel comforted by the amount of alternative, independent voters that we have. Okay, tap the things. Time for nerdy, and we're going to have a break for our moderator. Tap the screen.
Tap the screen. Tap the screen. Tapping is clapping. It's free. You don't have to give anything. You just have to tap. What was the other thing I was? Oh yeah, share. Sharing also helps as well. Like I said, joining the team up top helps boost the live. As many comments as we can get boost the live. It just helps get more people in here, so we can get more people talking about this and more messages put across. And subscribe. I saw Mrs. Radical was our first subscriber. Thank you for subscribing, Mrs. Radical.
I'm so
So
excited.
if you want to subscribe, you get really cool emotes. I'm actually going to show you what they look like right now because I can comment in here with them because we get access to them as moderators. I think. No, I don't on this one. Hang on, I have to do it on this one.
People with multiple screens, eh? One.
I have the other. I have the other
phone.
account. So these are really cool emotes that we have. That they're coming up right away. There we are. Those are the cool emotes that I've created for this account so far. And then we have some other ones that are going to be coming soon, eventually.
So awesome. You're doing such a good job.
I don't.
Yes.
I might
like the
come to
techie
you for
stuff.
pointers now. I'd be like,
Sure.
Okay, Polly and Nerdy, would you guys arrange like a Jeopardy like for the left?
Yeah. Somebody else just subscribed. Who just subscribed?
that would be
Two
cool.
people subscribe. We are on a subwave now.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my gosh.
Excited.
Who just subscribed?
Radical.
Radical and IOC. Oh, IOC, you were trying to subscribe last time. Thank you. Thanks for subscribing.
Sorry.
Thanks, Radical.
I was hoping to, I just want people to know because a lot of people are comparing the BC Conservatives to the Conservatives and they're not the same at all. If I was going to say who the BC Conservatives were, if I was going to compare them to a federal party, I would compare them to the PPC.
Yes, I agree.
That's who I would say they are. Our
Lots of
BC
you saw that
Conservatives are the PPC federally. And a lot of people are confusing that, like, they think it's the same. They're using the same mottos. They're trying to steal the conservative.
I think they're leaning so far that way. It's like hard not to see them as the same.
Yeah. It's the name. It's the look. They've got everything. They've got their logo and everything looking exactly the same as the Canadian Conservative Party. But they're not. They're the PPC. Like, they're the federal PPC.
It's the look. It's the laugh.
Would you mind if I stole that idea for TikTok?
Yes.
Because you're right. And I've never put the two and two together. And I think it's like a sneaky little buggers kind of thing to do, right? But I agree. I think that it does lean more further right than even our general conservatives at a federal level.
That's right. I'm not half as scared as the Conservatives, the federal Conservatives, as I am the BC Conservatives.
I think that's a good point. Here's the question. So Tiny Trump was out here lending his support to the rise of the BC Conservative Party and the amount of money it takes to pay somebody $20,000 to change their riding, for example. The money that came out of that rise in 6 months is very disturbing to me. And really was quite offended by Tiny Trump and his politicking here. I phoned BC elections and I phoned Canada elections, and it's not illegal. There's nothing wrong with it. There's no rule against it. And so my question is, if Jake Neat showed up to suddenly support David Eby, would we have the same feelings towards that as lefties who looked at, the interference from Tiny Trump? Or would we welcome that? What do you think?
No.
Tell us why.
No.
Because typically in the West, the NDP and anybody that's on the left wants to distance themselves from the federal Liberals and the federal NDP.
Yeah.
And the one other thing I wanted to point out before my battery dies is I want everybody in these boxes here to look up and down and side to side and look who's in these boxes and who's there. What demographic is most represented here is women. The problem is the majority of males, especially the ages of 50 plus, are voting conservative. And the vote, typically, if you look at electionscanada.ca, 65% of males are voting. And
the overall female vote is very low. So like we need to like somehow reach the men and convince them that conservative politics are not the way. That's why like you're seeing policies such as like anti-queer rights things and like anti-women rights. It's because they're trying to appeal to that male vote and keep that up. So like that's what we need to be targeting, I think.
I agree with you 100%, 100%. And when you break down the statistics of who votes, yes, the older generation vote more, right? They vote more. They get out there. They our challenge is to get the youth out there. But in saying that, the group of baby boomers that are out there are dying off, right? And the next group replacing them are more progressive. So I hold on to that. And there is a strong voter turnout from 25 and up. So depending on how you define youth, which in the programs I worked in used to go all the way to 29, there's still some good representation to work from in terms of getting the youth out there from 18 to 25. I think that's the real narrow zone to work on. And in order to get them out, you're going to have to go to them. You go to where they hang out. You go to where they spend time when they want a social justice issue concern dealt with. You look at the social service programs that are delivering to the youth, and then you work with those programs to try and get the message out there.
That's true, but there's also now the red pill movement that's converting young men into like these misogynistic upholders.
Yep.
That's why Trump was hashtagging that men's group, that women, that misogynistic men's group, real popular. They blame everything on women, right?
I think it's important for men to get out there too and start mentoring young men. We don't go to church as leftists, a lot of us, so that's how they reach those young men. Through sermons, through getting together, we kind of have to do our own sermons through community and reaching out and connecting with them and mentoring them and guiding them.
You sing it, Queen. That's exactly it.
I have a question. So the only place I can vote is a church, and I don't feel safe voting at a church because of the fact that I don't know if my vote's actually going to make it to the ballot, the vote that I actually have. Yeah. The only place I'm allowed to vote is in a church because that's the closest to the zone where I live.
But it's not the church running it. It's Elections Canada or Elections Alberta running it.
Elections BC?
You can always.
She's in Alberta.
I'm in Alberta.
In Alberta. Oh, sorry.
I'm talking about when I vote for the federal. Where would I vote if I don't?
That's Elections Canada.
Marsh, that's not entirely true. You can vote at any election office at any time during the election period.
Okay.
Especially if you're doing early voting. Early voting, you can go anywhere.
Yeah. Early voting. And I think you can vote online too, can't you? You're voting by mail, right? We have vote by mail, right?
Yeah, you can vote by mail.
Okay, yeah.
Are you looking for more privacy than the church?
Yeah, fair. It's a church is not a good space for everyone.
Yeah, they usually do them in churches just because it's bigger spaces for everybody, right? Like it's a big enough space that they have like that they can bring all those people in for like the church gyms and stuff like that, right? Yeah. So
I want to read something off of my electoral card that I got in the mail, making a little bit.
Don't dox yourself.
No, I made sure my address is on the back. It says here, you can vote at any voting place on the back of this card. You can also vote at a district electoral office, by mail, or at any other voting place. You find a station, they'll figure it out. Everything's electronic now. They're expecting the results of this election to be announced within 15 minutes.
Yes.
I'll step down for Lotus Lady.
Oh, please.
Okay, thank you so much, Polly, for joining us.
I love you guys.
We love you.
Bye.
Yeah, and as soon as the election is called, you can go to any to the voting office and like place your vote there. They'll have everybody that's registered to vote, and they'll cross your name off and give your ballot and stuff.
And even if you're not registered, you can register in the moment.
Yes, you can. You can.
Don't have
Hey
to
guys, I just came from the voting booth. I just came. So
Yay!
I've been knocking doors all day. I've been knocking doors this afternoon, and I hit the advanced polling station on my way home. So all you need is your ID. You don't even need your voter card, just your ID. Go into the voting. They'll find it for you. They'll give you the ballot. And you don't actually even have to stuff it in the box this year. They've got a automatic counter. So you go in, you give them your card, they look you up, they check everything, they hand you your ballot, you go in, you make your ballot, and then you go down and they help you feed it into the machine and you cast your ballot. And you're done, and they give you a nice little sticker. I got a standing ovation because they were bored. I got a standing ovation for voting. I suggested they hand out edibles as treats for people who vote, but they, you know.
You vote.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So
That's
anyways, the advanced polls are open 8 to 8. And you should have your card. It should tell you if you can't find it there. They did send out a BC elections guide, and you can also go to the BC elections website.
So there's a safe spot for everybody.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can vote at any district elector office at any time, anywhere. You can vote in the advanced polls still. You can vote by mail still if you've requested a mail-in ballot. And as long as it gets there by midnight on the 19th, it still counts.
Can you tell me a little bit about the 388 polls? I saw your
Yes.
content.
Okay. So 388. So the thing about 338 is it's an aggregate, which means that it takes all of the information from all the polls and it has a formula that it uses to average it out. And so if there is a poll in there that is biased, the idea is that the other polls will kind of average out that bias, right? Okay. The thing is that the 338 polls are not tracking the independents or the unaffiliated candidates. We have 33 of those across our however many ridings we have now. That's a lot. That's a lot of independent candidates, and they're not being polled. Nobody's asking if you're voting independent. They're asking you if you're voting NDP, Green, or conservative, or other. But they're not tracking the others. And what I'm hearing on the ground, especially like I live in a BC United riding, they're very upset that the BC United did what it did to them. The voters are very upset.
My candidate that was BC United, I just looked on him on Facebook and was chatting with him, and he was touting the Green Party.
Oh, yeah.
That is something I never thought I would see the day.
Well, actually, BC United candidate who was forced out of running contacted the candidate I'm supporting the NDP candidate, and they actually went and had coffee together. And the BC United handed over their research on John Rustad to David Eby's team.
Wasn't that sweet, hey?
Right?
Wow.
Yeah, what the BC United did to their voters is just awful, and the MLAs. Like, I don't support them, but I would be so angry if the NDP did that to me. That would be it. Like, I would not support them again.
Yeah. And when I was saying earlier, I wish Creek Pete was up here in the box, because the way our media is covering the lack of this story right here, because I brought up earlier, MS Lotus Lady, I brought up this conversation about the independent people, and it came from you. It came from you, right? The information came from you, and it's a lot of people. It's not a little bit of people. It's a lot of people. And I know in my riding, Shirley Bond is worshipped almost. Like, her husband died a couple of years ago. The whole community cried.
Yeah.
her, and they're crying with her right now about what the BC United Party and the Conservatives did. So I'm looking forward to the results of our local elections because I want to see how that played out on the BC.
It was corruption, right? Like it's corruption because the money's gone. The candidates that raised that money, they didn't get that to run on because it was raised under the BC United banner. So election losses, they cannot access those donations. They can't access any of the money that was spent on literature. They can't access any of the staff, right? Like it was just such a dirty thing that they did to their voters. It was just such a dirty thing that they did. But
Sherry, is there any polling on whether on these UCP voters where they're leaning towards? Have they done any polling on them? It's hard to identify them, I guess. But
no, it is hard. It's hard to identify them, and so I'm canvassing in one of the richest zip codes, right?
Yeah.
Richest postal codes, because that's where I live. And I'll tell you, I've had some really good conversations. There are people, it's not a slam dunk. There is a lot of people that are supporting the candidate, and she's very divisive. She's an anti-vaxxer. I ran into one guy whose daughter lived next door to her, said she was a horrible human being. And then I talked to another man who worshiped her and has known her for years, right? But by and large, it hasn't been like a lot of door slamming in my face and that kind of thing. There's been people asking for lawn signs for the NDP. There's people that don't normally vote NDP that just cannot stomach letting John Rustad in as premier. They're concerned about his anti-science stance.
Good.
They're really concerned about the conspiracy theories and who has his ear. And this thing where he lied yesterday or Tuesday about the OD. He lied about that, and he lied about the Nuremberg 2.0, and he lied about something else. He walked back, and then they scrubbed the website of the more draconian things that they wanted to do. I noticed that he's been real quiet about SOGI and censorship in schools, even though that was on his platform. So the last conversation I had was an excellent conversation with a woman who's a lawyer. And she said to me, she says, I like my wealth. I like being wealthy, but I cannot let that man run this province. I cannot in good conscience do that. And she says, yeah, you've got our vote. And so it's mixed. It's not a slam dunk in this area. We did run across one guy who's a renter who was like, it's just time for a change and you can't convince me otherwise, but it's not going to affect him because he's a young white guy, right? Who's not really going to be terribly affected other than the rental part of it. He's not terribly going to be affected by a lot of these measures that the Conservatives, like he's not marginalized, right? So it's not going to affect him. But I wouldn't say it's like a loss. And I think that even though the candidate that's in this riding is she's 26, she's going to the all candidates debate tonight. And so and she's young, but she's been writing bills in the ledge for like 5 years. She's been working in politics for a long time. Like
you mean she's done more than Pierre Poilievre?
Yeah. And she's out there, and
that's not hard.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
What's her name?
Callista Ryan.
Nice.
Yeah. And she's just lovely, and she's smart as a whip, and she's energetic, and she's well spoken. And she was asked to sit. She had to leave canvassing early yesterday. She was asked by somebody to sit with David Eby while they were having a presser with the Indigenous people down. They were meeting with the First Nations, and she was asked to come and sit beside David Eby during this thing. So. She's involved, and she's fresh, and she's energetic, and and it's a pleasure to bang on doors for her, right? So But yeah,
Well, and
I
if
think
she
it's
can get
anybody's
elected,
game.
yeah, I was just going to say, if someone like her at her age can get elected, that's also a huge role model for other young people to get involved and to see it can be done. That it's not all older people sitting there with their old-fashioned ideas.
Well, and
That would be such a benefit.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's time. It's time for us to kind of step out of the way and let them have their turn, right? So I don't, like I said, you would think that it would be a slam dunk for the Conservatives in the riding that I'm in Vancouver. I'm in Vancouver, Kilchina, which is a very ritzy, wealthy neighborhood riding. And it's not a slam dunk. It's not.
All Chip Wilson living there. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, and actually, it's funny you should bring that up because my candidate's remark on that was that, Chip Wilson just gave us the best free advertising we ever could.
Yeah.
Right? Because people are like, Chip Wilson supports Conservatives? Screw that guy, right? Like, he is not liked in Vancouver at all. At all.
I don't wear my sportswear there anymore. And I think a lot of people are thinking that way across Canada, right?
Yeah.
They're paying attention.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Sherry, may I ask a question?
Yeah, of course.
When you say about a ritzy neighborhood, do you think they have more influence over the vote?
Well, everybody just has one vote, right? Like everybody has one vote. But when I bring up the fact that they're a ritzy neighborhood, it's because there's a lot of wealth there, and the NDP has made it clear they plan to tax wealth, right? Like that's where the leftist parties are going. They're going to start taxing wealth, and so generally people. So there's a story that illustrates this really well. Around World War I in Germany, after Germany lost the war and they were fined with reparations, they couldn't pay them. And the businessmen, there was only two ways they were going to pay them. One was the government was going to seize property and then own the means of production to pay back the reparations, or they would have to raise taxes significantly on the businessmen to pay for the reparations. The businessmen didn't want to lose their wealth, so they deliberately tanked currency so that it was worthless, and then they paid their reparations back with the worthless currency.
Correct.
Throwing the whole country into a mass depression, which was not even like the likes of the 1930s. Like it was so bad in Germany, and it gave rise to the Mustache Man. They felt that protecting their wealth was more important than protecting democracy.
Correct.
And that's the thing about that.
And you think that carries through to BC elections?
Oh yeah.
History repeats itself.
And that's why you see Pierre being able to have $1,700 a plate dinners, and is having his donor in the ritziest neighborhoods and stuff like that. The donor dinners and stuff is because not all people with wealth. I have to say that, like, there are people out there who are philanthropic and they care about society and they care about the poor and they do care and they're generous, right? But there is a certain segment of people who they're just different than us, and they do call the shots. In the last municipal elections here in Vancouver, Chip Wilson funneled $380,000 into an entity called Pacific Progress or something like that, which funneled money into Ken Sims' campaign. And they were having private dinners for Ken Sims in lawyers' offices and stuff across Vancouver.
Mm-hmm. It's going to be lawyers.
Okay, so now that you're closer to the election, and we're getting within days, right?
We have got 9 days.
9 days.
Yeah.
What is your opinion now? Because I'm asking because Manitoba finally got an NDP
Yes.
premier.
Yes, they
Rob.
did.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
BC, from what I'm learning, is looking at NDP.
Yeah.
Ontario does not want Doug Ford, which is conservative.
Mm-hmm.
Saskatchewan is looking to exit their conservative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I can go down east and we can follow the same path. So BC is a huge win for other people in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The big last fight, right? They need BC desperately.
Well, and we shouldn't be in this position. That's the thing. Like when you look at the two parties on paper, we shouldn't be in this position. There is no logical reason why this race is so close. There's no logical reason for it. And it's
No common sense, eh?
what's that?
No common sense around it.
Well, no,
Exactly.
there really isn't. There really isn't. I don't know if they don't think that it'll get really bad or if they don't, like I find that Canadians by and large are really naive.
Yeah.
And they don't believe that things can get really bad.
They don't see the whole picture.
No.
Well, I think part of that is because Canada is a wealthy country in and of itself. And that, like my family, for instance, that just lived their whole life, like my sister recently said, I just wish, like we could just go back to the days where we didn't think about politics anymore.
Yeah.
And a lot of Canadians live their whole life not having to worry, not having to seek food, not having to seek shelter, not having to do those pieces, but life has shifted. And now that lower middle class is lower class.
Yeah.
And
Well, and I
some
think
of the mainstream, or sorry, some of the middle class that is, when that happens, the upper middle class have so many members of their own kind, their own family affected.
Yeah.
They start seeing it. So I think this, this housing crisis, the food crisis, all of that have brought way more players into the political arena than ever before. And they're new and they're young in the sense that they may not have ever been exposed to politics.
Yeah.
And they're just learning now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's that. And then also too, like you have to remember our liberal and conservative parties for decades were very close to each other.
Yes. Yes.
Right? Both parties sat around center. And so that's how you got red Tories and blue liberals, right? People I don't think people are paying attention enough to realize that how far right our right wing has gone. And people still call them progressive conservatives. People still call it the PC party. I just had a 3-day argument with somebody who was trying to tell me that who used PC to describe the current conservative parties in Canada. And I'm like, they are nowhere near PC. They're nowhere near PC. What's that? Go ahead.
I just think it's time for Canadians to really, really analyze themselves and their voting styles. And I'm challenging myself even with that. I'm an ABCer. I'm a swing voter. You know what I mean? And I've got to look at the cards. You and I, Emma's Lotus Lady, have had lots of conversations about whether I'm swinging this year, whether I'm going with the numbers, how that's going to look. And, one of the things I'm always taking away from this is politics is not a football sport.
No.
And it's also not my daddy voted for it and my daddy before that voted for it or anything like that. Or I was in oil and gas and that worked or whatever.
Yeah.
This is about our kids and our future.
Yes, it is.
Well,
it
and
is.
absolutely. Go ahead, Women Against Poly.
No, I was just going to say, I totally agree with you, Sherry, that people's view of the current Conservative Party is old style. It's not cognizant of what they actually represent right now, which is that extreme right-wing, fake populist Trump Putin influenced for his own personal gain party. And I hope that we don't have a situation where we're going to have to learn the hard way, at least federally, because it's going to hurt a lot of people, and it will turn them, it'll do what it's done in Ontario with that god-awful government they have there. It'll dissuade people from voting even more. It's almost like being, it's like being abused, right?
Well,
So
we are abused in Ontario.
Yeah, you
yes,
are.
and I feel that one of the things here will be what happens in November. Well, certainly our own BC election, but also what happens in the States. If Kamala wins, then hopefully that starts to turn a bit of a tide. I don't know, but I don't think people understand the danger of these conservatives.
No, and I think that that's really, I think that's really at the root of it, is that they seem to think that these are Brian Mulroney's conservatives, and they don't understand how, but some, you know what? There's a lot of people who will vote that way that don't understand, but there are a lot of people who are voting for them because they're like that.
And
they like the fact that the Indigenous community has come out against Rustad. They like the fact that the Muslims have come out against Rustad. They like the fact.
We're breaking for nerdy. Sorry.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Oh no. I was waiting for. I just putting my hand up just to talk next.
Yeah.
Because I just wanted to say, let's just put this out there when Kamala wins.
Yes.
And not if. When Kamala wins.
I just there again, it just shouldn't even be a contest. Like there shouldn't even be a consideration.
Facts.
There's no contest. But I really want us to think clearly, like look back to our history. Look back to when the insurrection or when Donald Trump lost, and then we saw the insurrection, and then we watched the Canadian convoy take flight. And a lot of people thought when Donald Trump that this was something that we weren't going to have to deal with. And then the insurrection came. So when they lost, they came to Canada and they fought harder. And they gripped on to Canadian politics. And that's kind of my fear if Kamala wins. Not against her. I'm all about her. I adore her. But are they going to latch on to that Conservative Party that much harder and the rhetoric rises?
Yeah, it's hard to say. Like I think one thing we have to really, I think the conditions aren't the same, but we're still trying to measure things based on the way things used to be. So we're still trying to cling on to polls. We're still trying to think like, well, if they do this, we do that, blah, blah, blah. I think it's wide open. I think it's anybody's. I don't think we can predict. That's what I'm trying to say is I don't think we can predict what's going to happen anymore.
May I interject? Over my long lifetime, I have based sometimes politics on history. Not always, but sometimes. And in this particular instance, I honestly believe if Republicans get in states, then conservatives will get into Canada, and it's not going to be a good time.
Well, what's interesting is I was listening to JB a few weeks ago, and he said actually the opposite. Historically, when they go Democrat in the States, we go conservative up here. When we go conservative here, or when we go liberal up here, they go conservative down there.
But we haven't had the scare tactics.
Yeah, and that's it, right? Like that's why I'm saying
much.
That's why I'm saying, like, I don't know if we can really have any kind. I don't think we can predict what's happening because these times are so dynamic.
That's right.
I totally agree with you. We can't. I mean, this prediction that they're saying is that they're going to get the House and the presidency.
Right.
Yeah. When was the last time that happened?
Yeah.
I don't know about that, but I know part of the reason when what you're saying statistically is that when there's like a Republican government, we go with the Liberals here in Canada. That's because of the way we are choked financially. And so we react to that financial crisis by turning to the Liberals, right? Like I think that's the big picture there. And if Kamala, and it's like comma and law, the same thing, by the way. I listened to this little video because I said all these different things. But anyway, Kamala, if she gets elected, you know, the scary part of like people going to the conservative end of things is kind of a threat here in Canada.
But you know what? If we have NDP provincially and then a conservative federal government, that's going to be a nice buffer for the provinces.
Yes.
Right? So
Yes.
if we can bring in NDP governments provincially, the only province that probably will get hurt is Alberta, because they, for some reason, they just will not let go of the UCP. And I don't understand that. But see, the reason why it was so awful in BC in the 2000s, in 2010 to 2017, was because we had a federal conservative government and a provincial conservative government.
Right.
Nobody cared about the problems. Nobody cared about the growing inequality. Nobody cared about her ripping up teachers' contracts. Nobody cared. And we were kind of, you know, I remember feeling like my country abandoned me, like nobody cared what was going on in British Columbia.
I had that feeling too.
I think
Sorry, Mrs. I've talked a lot. Go ahead.
I'm just feeling the political personal in this moment.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
That's exactly
okay.
what happened.
I think the reason why Alberta can't get rid of the UCP is because big oil is very tied, very much tied to the UCP, and that's why Alberta will not get rid of UCP, because big oil plays a big factor into that part.
Yeah.
And they're scared for their jobs, and they're scared for a lot of things. My husband was a well site geologist out of Alberta working, and we lived in BC. And my vote, I'm ashamed to say, was for Christy Clark. I didn't know enough, and I was so excited to see a woman in politics.
Right.
And I couldn't imagine that a woman would hurt us.
Yeah.
Those ways.
And that's another thing too about women like Christy Clark and Danny Smith. Like, we can't celebrate them, right? Because they're just like they are patriarchal women, is what they are, and they and in some ways, I think they're purposely put in those positions so that people can go see what a woman did to that province, see what a woman did when she was in charge. She can't. How could she look what a woman did to BC? How can you put a woman in Parliament to lead the country? Like, how can we have a woman prime minister when all the women that have? What's that?
Kim Campbell, good example of that.
Yeah.
You're so correct.
Yeah.
So correct.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I really feel you in that moment. To the missus there, I really feel you. It did. It felt like we were left alone. Like nobody cared about us. Nobody. Couldn't get places to live, and nobody gave a crap. And then and I remember how excited I was when Justin Trudeau came into power. I was so excited, and then I was so disappointed when he didn't say anything about housing.
I think you're right, Sherry, too, about that nobody cared. In my career at the time when they laid off the thousands of healthcare workers in this province, I worked for the organization that was responsible for that at a very high level. And people, when that legislation was passed, in our legislature, my colleagues were cheering and clapping because those people were going to lose their jobs.
Yeah.
And I remember feeling completely sick because they wanted to get back at the unions. And I remember saying it was absolutely sickening. And you're right. There was nobody behind any of these people. Nobody.
No. And Harper didn't care. Like I don't even remember seeing Harper in BC. Like, I don't even remember.
Manipulated.
What's that?
We were manipulated.
Harper helped that manipulation with CPAC, right? This is a long game.
Well, and also too, the thing about Harper is that our media normal washed him.
They sane washed him.
They've sane washed him. Yeah, they sane washed him. They made him come off as somebody who was, you know, they, like, even today when I have conversations with people who aren't like hard conservative about Harper, they'll be like, well, Harper did some good things. And it's like, but the media really sane washed him and made him seem way less extreme than he actually was. I had an argument with somebody about Harper being an evangelical and having that evangelical base. And he says, well, that's not a thing in Canada. I said, that's 16% of the Canadian populace.
I lived in Harper's riding. I went to church with these people.
Yeah.
I broke bread with these people. They are absolutely those people.
Yeah.
Absolutely, without a doubt. I want to touch on your media part, and it's just a thought and a feeling I have, but this is a little bit why Beaver Politics was created, is because we can't trust the media. We want to become the media.
Yeah.
You know, to put out the truth if we can, you know, because nobody's covering it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's a great thing, Mrs. Radical, because I also think too, I think from my perspective, I see the world in the pre-Trump era, which Harper was.
Yeah.
Which you could sort of pretend he was okay because he didn't do too much if he didn't look too closely, you know, blah, 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 being a nice Canadian. Then Trump came. They sane washed him in the States. They didn't know what to do with him. He won. He could win this one as well. Sorry, nerdy. The media still doesn't know how to deal with him. And so now we're in a situation, a post-Trump world in Canada with Polyev and the Rustads and the Danielle Smiths and the Scott Moes. And they're being sane washed completely by the media. Like, and so people, ordinary citizens who don't spend their life on TikTok and Twitter like I do, they don't necessarily know that. And they make this guy look normal, and they actually, Polyev anyhow, and they actually laud him. And so what you guys are doing with Beaver Politics is so important, and what JB does and all of these other people, because we need alternate methods of giving information, because our media is not able to cope with this. In fact,
have you seen anything about BC Rising out of the Tyee?
Yes.
Have you seen anything about that?
Well, I joined them actually.
Did you?
Yeah, I did, because I wanted to, under a different name, of course, because I wanted to be involved.
Good job.
And I was away. Yeah, I was away last week, so I couldn't join their meeting. But there's another one next week, so I'm gonna start sitting in on that.
So we're
and
going to
just seeing what
rely
that's all
on you for
about.
some information.
Yeah, I'm just curious. It's probably not going to be much of a surprise, but I think that, again, back to that media piece, which is something, you know, especially the boomers, they're watching the news on TV and all of that. And you look at CBC and CTV and Global, and they sane wash these people every day, and it's so dangerous. And we saw what happened in the States, and it was a disaster for them and for women.
Although I have to say, I have been impressed at the pushback the BC media is giving against Rustad.
Yes, they're doing a good
different than
job.
what we're seeing in other areas of the country. They actually are pushing back on him really hard. Somebody phoned the coroner's office to fact check that story.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of people like the Jazz Joe Halls, the Luke, what's his name from Press Progress, a lot of these people are on Twitter. I follow Twitter really, really closely, or X, as bad as it is, but there's a lot of good people on there. And they're the ones, they keep promoting this, and they get a lot of feedback on their online pages when they do this. And that's what's making the mainstream media. So I agree with you, Sherry. It's fantastic. It's good to see.
Yeah. Well, even my little TikToks are starting to pick up steam, right? Like my viral videos are the ones that are talking about how Rustad wants to take away Indigenous rights, and how Rustad wants to repeal UNDRIP, and how Rustad wants to hand the housing market back over to the developers and stuff. Those videos are, and actually a candidate from Vernon, the Vernon Lumby NDP candidate, took my video analysis of the debate and posted it on Instagram.
Right.
Yeah.
Just a quick moment to plug Maple Mines.
Yes, Maple Mines. Yes, we for those who are watching, my comments seem to be frozen here, but for anybody who's watching, Christy, Polly Chick, and myself do a Maple Minds podcast on Tuesdays. We go live on YouTube and Twitch. And I think we're going to try other platforms. Sometimes we're live on TikTok as well. We covered the debate live. That was a lot of fun, Mrs. Radical. Thanks for joining us. You should have heard the four of us. We're like, when every time Russ Dad yelled, we were like, he's lying.
We should have played a drinking game just with our tea or something, but.
And then we're hoping to push out some more content before the election. Like I said, we've only got 9 days, and you know it's going to go so fast, so fast.
And I'm glad David AB went out and launched his "I voted today" thing from the early voting station. Nobody else did that. I haven't seen it from the other two. But I just to counterpoint what you said about how our media is covering our election. I am disappointed. I see the making the whole Roostad crew. I see them minimizing it. I see them veering away from the conspiracy theories and not ramming them.
That's true.
The very next day, the conversation should have been about that lie. What a huge freaking lie to make in the moment. And like I did a video on how he did it by rote. He lies so much that he can come up with these stories in the moment.
Well, and what's the point? What was the point of lying about that? Like it was
about everything.
It was such a silly lie. Like it was just such a silly lie to make.
Because his base will believe it. It doesn't matter if he's called out, they will believe it.
Yeah. Yeah.
They lie constantly. These guys, that's all they do is lie. And I think we have to be very cognizant and aware and just accept that that's what it is and call them out every time because they are serial liars.
And the last person I talked to at the door there, the last person I canvassed before I left for the afternoon, we had quite a lengthy conversation. And I said to her, I said, we talked about how he lied about that. And I said to her, I said, the first thing I thought was, well, if he's willing to lie about something silly like that, what if is he going to lie to us about clear cutting forests? Is he going to lie to us about poisoning indigenous lands? Is he going to lie to us about what else is he going to lie to us about?
Everything.
Right?
I just want to interject here. Mike says, don't forget, Saskatchewan just called an election today.
Yes.
That's right.
Go Saskatchewan.
It's a tight race, though. Funny enough, it's a tight race.
Is it?
Yeah, and Scott Moe is like, he's already promising. He's already got money. He's going to pay people. Like I haven't gone in and completely looked at it, but there's already the billboards up. I don't know if any of you. I don't know if you folks follow Johnny.
Yes, I do.
JAWNKNEE. He is covering Saskatchewan, and of course, Boots will be probably covering Saskatchewan as well. But I would look to Sean or Mule Politics.
And out of Lorazepam.
And who else?
Out of Lorazepam.
Oh, yes, out of Lorazepam. Those folks will all be covering the Saskatchewan election, I believe. And then there's also, there's one in Labrador too, I believe, isn't there?
Oh, is there?
Yeah,
there's a
PEI.
couple in
And
Labrador,
Ontario is coming up.
And I'd like to put a plug in for Mr. Kirby, who is doing a lot of political conversation about New Brunswick. I'm from New Brunswick. New Brunswick. And we covered the Christo-fascist. We covered that in a Christo-fascist conversation here on Beaver Politics, which I want to take a deeper dive into at another show after the election. But the woman that he was specifically focused on is now making the news because of her talking in tongues and her autistic strain, rather. It's just and guess what? She was, I think, born, but definitely raised in Alberta, and then to Bible College, and then ran a youth group that actively worked against women's free choices. And that went, and it gained momentum. Her roots in Alberta are living out in New Brunswick.
Really, You know what? You know what really ticks me off about all of this is that our taxpayer dollars were funneled into those education realms, like into those education, our taxpayer dollars. So my taxpayer dollars went and funded that radicalization through funneling my money into religious schools.
Yep.
Schools.
Who allowed that to happen?
Party schools.
Yeah.
That happened under Harper. Harper opened the funding for the private religious schools, and indeed they had almost like a 40%. It's really high. It's a high 30 percentile of funding increased to these religious schools.
Well, you know who did it in BC? You know who established that in BC was Bennett.
Yeah.
W.C. Bennett before Barrett.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was established in the 70s here that private schools would get public funding, the religious schools.
Thank you for that historical piece. I love learning those pieces they explained today. Yeah.
Anyways, folks, thank you very much for having me. I gotta go. I've been out canvassing for 4 hours and I'm tired and it's time to eat.
So much.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Good night.
Have a good one. We'll see you later.
So we're respectfully at 7:38 now. Where are we sitting, my friends? Nerdy, how do you feel?
Good.
Are we
I just want to remind everybody that we have a YouTube channel. Go subscribe to it. We have currently, I'm just refreshing it. We have 7 subscribers so far. Yay!
Okay, but hold on. I've been trying to subscribe. And every time that button comes up on the side and you're supposed to double click, it doesn't do anything.
It did that to me.
Are you talking about for subscribing here or on YouTube?
Here.
Here? So if you hit the heart button, or sorry, not the heart, the star down at the bottom, right?
Okay.
And then you hit subscribe.
Right.
It'll give you an option of an auto renewal plan or a 1 month plan.
No, it's going for a year.
We're part of Sub Fiesta. They fixed it for us.
They did. I was going to tell you that. I took a screenshot for you.
Yeah, they fixed it. I just saw it. So then you just pick which one you want and then hit subscribe, and then it'll ask you how to pay and all that kind of stuff.
And you get it on
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh,
I've been trying, ladies.
We need you in our army.
You appreciate it.
Okay, well, I wish y'all a good night.
All right. Thank you for coming up.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you very much. And I must go. I have a Beaver.
Yeah, I have trivia in 20 minutes.
And we need to give you a break.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
I've been putting together my playlist and everything while we've been doing this, so it's I've been multitasking.
I'm so excited. I had my first experience going on YouTube today and seeing this there and watching the show again and going, oh,
yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
I need to do this, that, and the other thing. But it was wonderful. Thank you, Nerdy. It was wonderful.
Yeah, no problem. So to answer questions, you can get to our YouTube page from our bio, from the Beaver Politics bio. You can also subscribe through our bio as well. So you don't have to be in a live to subscribe. You can subscribe through there. I don't know if it counts for the Sub Fiesta if you do it when we're not live, but either way, it's a subscription. So yeah, but you can do it on the bio for sure.
I'm so happy.
Yeah.
My heart.
I joined it.
Excellent. Thank you. You were our first follower.
Thank you.
Oh,
yeah, you were our first subscriber.
I don't think it's under this name. It's under whatever my YouTube name is, but whatever.
Yeah.
I subscribed at about 1 o'clock this afternoon. So that's
it's okay. I created it about 1 o'clock in the morning, so.
There you go. Anyway,
Awesome.
bye
Bye.
All right.
Have a good evening.
Conversation.
Perfect.
Thank you, Women Against Tiny Children. Thank you for everybody who came up into the box and for the 3 of us here. Much appreciation to both of you. We'll be seeing you in cyberspace soon.
Have a beautiful evening.
Have a good
friends.
night.
See you next Thursday. Thanks for joining us.
Bye-bye.
Bye.